Hi, fellow Christians and curious people of the world. My name is Zai, but a lot of you may know me as Stacks. Today I will be sharing my testimony from God. Prepare yourselves, as this may be one of the most spiritually spine-tingling testimonies of hell you may hear. And so it began. On a random night in 2014 at young age of 8 years old, it was then I saw hell. I remember initially seeing multiple shadows and things hovering and flying around my small dark room. Completely struck and paralyzed from these shadows, my young self began to feel nervous and vulnerable, and so I immediately hid under my bed covers thinking they would go away, although they did not. Only minutes later I became sleepy and instantly fell into a void of deep sleep. Well, that's what I thought it was. Boom! Seconds later I was in a dark, dark abyss of total darkness and emptiness. In the vision I was clueless as to what was going on, as this was not an average sleep dream. I become aware of senses you don't ever get from normal night dreams. This place was decaying, rotting, and had a bad feeling to it, as if dead bodies were buried all underneath your feet. It looked very volcano-like and had similar features to one, but more evil and sinister, with orange and red, black rocks melting around it, with the floor being as hot as a stove being left on for hours on hours. You could just imagine how I felt being placed there. It was as if I had heightened senses all round, knowing I was in a conscious body. However, seconds more. Boom again, I was teleported into a place, a cave, a dark world that words cannot describe. Immediately, without thought, I knew somehow that I was in hell. The hell we all know, the hell some think is not real, and the hell that trembles beneath our feet. Like I said previously, I could feel, touch, and hear everything that was going on when I got there. It was as if it was real. I later knew this was the spiritual realm. And trust me, it was realest experience ever. The distance between real world that we live and the spiritual world is almost an inch apart from each other, it felt like. Suddenly, all I knew was Jesus Christ, and that was all that was in my thoughts the whole time. And mind you, I was an atheist boy who thought science and just living as a human being was the way of life and death. But again, somehow all I thought about was this God which I did not know or serve at that time. This ultimately shocked me. But at the same time, I strongly was given this ability to know why and how I was sent to hell. When you are down there, you know the reason why you are there. Therefore, you cannot say, "Oh God, why have you sent me here?" or "Why am I here?" because when you arrive, you are given the power of knowledge to answer all your questions. I remember being shackled to the hot reddish ground, almost like a human stretcher, chained from the wrists all the way down to my ankles like some caged animal. I took a glimpse upwards and saw creatures, although these creatures were not what you would think of a demon, because they had human body parts and human limbs, abs, and very steroid-type muscular bodies, with the feet of a horse or donkey, and large pointy horns of a bull. They stood about 14 feet in the sky, and only this spiritual senses you are given allows you to even see their faces that high, with beaming evil red eyes of a reptilian snake. They tormented me with mocking words, calling me stupid and an idiot for living a sinful life, and laughing and chuckling with such hatred and vim in their deep voices. I felt like nothing. I felt hopeless. But again, the only thing I knew down there was the name Jesus. That name was what kept me somewhat sane from the mental torture the demons put me through in that moment of time. They had no remorse, no type of sympathy or love. They hated me. They wanted me to suffer in their world. But now what I'm about to share will open your eyes, and without a doubt this was the most traumatic part of my vision. Boom! I was teleported again. This time I arrived in my old home where I grew up most of my childhood and where I was staying at the time too. Still in shackles, I was fighting and fighting for my freedom to get out of this torment, but my wrists were not moving when I told them to, and my brain was not coordinating with the rest of my body, which scared me, as most of us have never experienced such things. I became anxious by the second, and finally screamed out for Jesus to come and save me and take me away from this excruciating torment, but I heard nothing. I later began to realize my mouth was not even opening or moving when I thought it was. All I could feel was fear, hopelessness, and then I finally gave up with calling his name. That is how helpless you feel when demons are surrounding you with no one to run to. I finally glanced up and saw a creature had walked out of my bedroom where I was still laying asleep. I saw the demon in its full bodily form, but this demon was different. I honestly thought this was the devil. It stood there looking down at me from the top of the stairs as I was chained up fighting for my life. Surprisingly, it bluntly stood still, but deeply in depth, looked into my eyes. It felt like it knew me very well, as if it had been in my life since I was born. I felt it knew me so well that it did not even have to speak for minutes and continued to haunt me with complete, utter silence. It gave me an extremely intimidating look with its dark red reptilian-like eyes with the pure intent of evil. The demon proceeded to showcase its scaly, crocodile-like fiery body, turning its back proudly, showing its snake-like tail. In this moment of my vision, I could not believe my eyes. I genuinely thought this was Satan himself showing his pride to me. The creature started disgustingly doing abnormal movements like licking its obsidian black, pin-sharp claws, which looked like it had real-life souls attached to it. I could almost hear the screams and souls from hell that it had consumed. This is no exaggeration. This is exactly what I saw with no doubt about it. Then suddenly all I could think about was Jesus. I could not scream for anything else, because while you are down there you forget everyone who you once loved, cared for, or knew when you was living in the real world. In the spiritual world, you only know one name and one name only, no matter how hard you try to think about anyone or anything else. But suddenly the demon began to taunt me and belittle my existence by saying words like, "You are a clown, you're stupid. You're with me now. This is where you will be and where you belong, you fool." With such a deep demonic voice, I felt like this was where I would be for eternity, like the demon said. However, I continued to scream for Jesus to protect me against the creature, surprisingly making the demon enraged and anxious with saying the name Jesus Christ. I could see they hated his name so much because of the change in violent behavior. Swiftly and abundantly, it leaped down onto me and looked me deep in the eyes as it seeped down to my chains. It was here in this point in time where I was literally face to face with what I thought was the devil, mainly because this demon was fearless and did not care about the name of Jesus. The name did not faze it at all. At this point, I stopped thinking about God and gave up. The demon saw this and used it as an opportunity to start ripping open my spiritual body's chest extremely violently. And I could even start to feel it in my real-life body's chest, as if both worlds were colliding together, tearing me apart like a lion eating its prey, ripping me open with no sense of remorse, and continued to do it until, boom, for the last time, I woke up from my sleep and felt the remaining pain from the spiritual realm still burning off my chest, as if someone had stuck a hot knife through the middle of my torso. As just an 8-year-old toddler seeing such things, it resulted in me having severe mental problems in my childhood, which I do not want to speak on, but haunted me for years and years on end. It grew me further away from even being a Christian due to the harshness and trauma I experienced in hell. But the main message of this testimony to tell you, no matter what happens in your life, whether it be trauma, death, or sickness, God is always with you and by your side through it all, and so you should never ever turn your back on him. He loves you. He really does. And it took me 10 years to figure that out. I have faith that anyone listening to this will fear God more and therefore turn your life around to ensure you join him in the kingdom of heaven. And this is coming from an ex-criminal and manipulator who hated people with revenge and hated God. I thank you all for listening, and I hope God blesses you all. But remember, do not let the enemy win this war. 29 STACKA.